You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. So it'll be LSU and Texas A&M Saturday morning, 11 a.m. in Tiger Stadium. And yes, everybody hates 11 a.m. kickoffs, but LSU's actually fared pretty well there. I would argue LSU's most complete game this year was the 11 a.m. kickoff in Starkville against Mississippi State. And LSU's best win this year was an 11 a.m. kickoff on the road in Columbia, Missouri against a Missouri team that is sitting here with just 2 losses to LSU and number 1 Georgia. So the kickoff time has not really affected this LSU team, and that's very encouraging going into this game on Saturday morning. Over the course of this week, though, you've heard this said, that A&M might be the best defense that LSU's faced all year. And I've had several of you ask, well, we've heard that. Are they really? We heard that with Florida State. We heard that with Alabama. Now we're hearing that with Texas A&M. So is there, which is the best defense that LSU will have faced all year in this great offense, and who might have an opportunity to slow them down? Could it be Texas A&M? So I kind of did a little bit of a deep dive into that, and I'm going to try not to bore you with numbers, but I want to run through it, and then I'll kind of give you the overarching conclusion that I came to about this A&M defense relative to the Florida State and Alabama defenses that LSU already played earlier this year. First of all, I did a grid, and I broke down Florida State, Alabama, A&M. Scoring defense, total defense, pass, rush, sacks, TFLs, all that sort of stuff. And again, not to go overboard with metrics, but suffice to say, there isn't a great discernible difference among the three. Scoring defense, Florida State's the best at just under 17 points a game. Bama, 17.3 points per game. A&M, 19.4 points per game. So Florida State's 12th, Bama's 14th, A&M's 25th in the country in scoring defense, but they're all within literally 2 points of each other. Total defense, it's inverted. A&M's 8th in the country in total defense, Bama's 17th, Florida State's 24th. But again, all relatively close. A&M allows just 286 yards a game. Pass defense, they're just a big clump. Florida State's 15th, A&M's 16th, Bama's 23rd, and they're all within 11 yards passing of each other. This is where you start to see how A&M separates itself defensively from the other two. Rush defense. A&M's 15th in the country at 102 yards a game. Bama's 27th, Florida State is 44th. Sacks. A&M, second in the country with 40 sacks. That's 3.6 per game. Bama and Florida State, 11th in the country with 32 sacks each, 2.9 per game. And TFLs, A&M leads the country in tackles for loss, averaging 8.5 tackles per loss per game. Florida State's 26th, Alabama's 34th. So when you look at it and break down their opponents, their win-loss records, who they played, who they did well against, their grand averages, when you include non-conference games, exclude non-conference games, there is not a great discernible difference. They're all very talented. Bama, Florida State, and Texas A&M all have talented players, all have had great success this year. The biggest difference is A&M's defensive front is clearly the best of the three. What's interesting about A&M, though, is they've lost 4 times. 3 of their 4 losses have been on the road. Their only home loss was the game to Alabama, and that was a close, low-scoring game. But when you look at A&M's 3 road losses, at Tennessee, and they lost that game allowing 20 points. But Tennessee ran it for 232 against A&M that day. Tennessee had their way on the ground. They only threw it for 100 yards, but they had their way on the ground, controlled the game. Miami put up 451 yards and 48 points. Ole Miss 518 and 38 points. A&M has struggled on the road, and the 2 better offenses they faced, Ole Miss and Miami, both dump trucked them. Now, Miami did have a kickoff return for a touchdown in that game. But they've shown you the formula of how to beat Texas A&M. Keep your quarterback upright, you can throw the ball. Ole Miss threw for 387, ran it for 131. Miami threw it for 374, ran it for 77. Run when you need to. Really do your damage to the air because they can't stop you as long as you keep your quarterback upright. So if you want the silver lining for LSU, LSU's offensive line is awesome. Tigers are 5th in the country in rushing yards. And I didn't even realize this, but LSU has allowed the offensive line has allowed the second fewest tackles for a loss in the country. They allow 2.8 tackles per loss per game. That's the second fewest in the country. And they allow under 2 sacks a game, 1.8 sacks per game. So this is really pretty easy. I'm not saying it's easy to execute, but when you look at what the path is for LSU, it's really easy, and it's on the LSU offensive line. If you can keep Jaden Daniels upright and prevent that really active and talented A&M front seven from continuing to put you behind the sticks, then you're going to do to A&M what you've done to everyone else, which is Jaden Daniels is going to sit there and carve you up, and when he has a crease, he's going to carve you up with his feet. So it's pretty easy, the path there. So when you've heard people say Florida State's the best defense that LSU's faced, or Bama's the best defense LSU's faced, or A&M, you can make a case for any of the three because they're all very similar in all of the major categories and how they've played out this year. The biggest difference is A&M's defensive front has been clearly the best of those three, and that's a big challenge for LSU. And as a matter of fact, on his Monday press conference, Brian Kelly did talk about that Texas A&M defensive front, which has to be a focus.
There's depth on the defensive line. Physically gifted athletes at all levels, inside and out, and they have versatility. Their defensive linemen can play anything from a 0 technique to a 5 technique. As I mentioned, Cooper's all over the field. You got to know where he is, and that's the strength of their Texas A&M defense.
It's a big challenge. It's going to be maybe the biggest challenge for this LSU offensive line so far this year. Just keep Jaden Daniels upright, let him do what he's done all year, and carve his way to New York City 2 weeks from Saturday. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.